Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another SPFBOX author interview panel. I am very, very excited. How do you guys feel about being the lucky panel 13?
I didn't even think about that.
Oh, it works for me. I know. I like it. My
It's
book
like,
came out on the 13th of October, so 13 is
it's
like
got to be a sign.
It's a good sign.
Good number. They're all good numbers, Brent.
Yeah, yeah. So it's so good to meet a whole new group of authors. We are going to try to get Jasmine on as well here. And so if we can get Jasmine on, we will pop her up on the screen. But we are here to talk about the self-published fantasy blog off. And for people who are tuning in because you love one or multiple of these authors and you haven't seen the other blitzes, this is panel number 13. So there are 12 others you can catch up with on the playlist before this one, and we have more coming up, about 8 more to come up between now and the end of Saturday night. So a lot of authors, a lot of books, a lot of talking. We're going to just go around the circle. Corinne, do you want to sort of start us off and we'll go around and tell us a little bit about, have you done SPFBO before and what book you've entered for this year?
Okay, I have not done SPFBO before because this is my debut novel. So it's Blood of the Stars. It's epic fantasy, super chunky. It's the first in 4 books called The Half-Light Chronicles. I launched it on Kickstarter last fall and then did a retail launch in March. So it's pretty new. It's actually the 8th book I've written, though. I started writing about 10 years ago, and I have 4 kids, and I said, I'm not going to try publishing until my youngest is in kindergarten, and so that's why I waited. So yeah, you want me to tell you about the book? Half-Lights basically are descendants from stars, and so they have magic in their blood. And this story is about a boy and a girl who were separated as children, and the girl was kidnapped and her blood is being used for its magic. And the boy has been looking for her ever since. And so this story is about them when their paths converge again as adults. So it's got lots of tropes: found family, reluctant loyalty, magical barriers, blood magic. There is a dragon. There is a small hint of romance. It's like a slow burn romance over the whole series. They're barely friends in this book. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
So if you follow the other panels, you know it's been like, dragons? Dragons? Are there dragons? Yes, there's Luna. Dragon! One of the things I've loved about doing these is that the different readers who are tuning in, who are here not as authors, but they're here to just find new books. Like, this is such a great way to find some new books for your TBR. And if you're watching live, there's links in the description box on YouTube, and you can just click there to grab any of these authors' books, as well as the full list of books to Mark Lawrence's blog. Mark's the person who organizes SPFBO. So, yeah, you can just pack up the TBR. What age range is it for, Corinne?
It's adult. Mm-hmm.
Nice. Love to see some dragon representation in adult fantasy. So Em, so good to have you on.
Hey, thank you for
What kind
having
of book
me.
are you bringing to SPFBO this year?
So my book is Bringer of the Scourge, which is an old school revival fantasy is what I call it, because it's not quite epic, it's not quite sword and sorcery, and it's not quite grimdark. It kind of falls in between all of those things. I would say that like it's kind of a love letter to like Glenn Cook and Fritz Leiber and C.L. Moore. So it's like very, very adventure heavy and very like I want to say tropey, but not in the ways that you might expect. It follows the adventures of Verlaine du Tallor, who is the babe on my cover in the armor. She is I will call her a deposed princess out for revenge, and the adventures therein are the meat of the book. I'm trying to think of a good way to describe the deeper elements, but basically it's a quest for revenge, but it doesn't go in the directions that she expects, or either of her longtime comrades, who are the other 2 point of view characters in the story. This is my first SPFBO. I follow it because I like to read also. So it's sort of interesting to be on this side of the desk this year. But yeah, one of my friends, the lovely Laura Huey, bullied me into it. And so that's why I'm here this year.
Thank you, Laura. Yes, and welcome. And Jasmine's on. Hey, Jasmine.
Hello. Good to see everybody.
Good to see you. We're just going around the circle introducing ourselves and our books and whether this is our first SPFBO and things like that. Alex, how about you?
Yeah, this is my second SPFBO. So I did my debut Windborn was in 2021. Is that number 7? I think it was. So yeah, they're both standalone books though, set in the same world. So the one I've got into this one is Trollgrave. Ta-da! Yeah, I just wanted to do something a bit different with this one. It's the Norse-inspired fantasy. In this world, there are warriors called Windborn warriors who are like resurrected and given superpowers, basically. So the first one was very much following like a shield maiden who became Windborn throughout. But the force that gives them their superpowers, called the Winds, which are the Northern Lights, but are like the trapped enemies of the gods who have been, trapped there, like sort of like Tartarus at the end of a god war. So the main character in Trollgrave is Alvir Einarsson. He's a god speaker. So it sort of follows a bit of a different tension in that he's very suspicious of all the Windborn because they're powered by the god's ancient enemies. And, he's not keen on that really. And it's sort of got much more of a sort of mysterious vibe in that a god speaker has gone missing in a different sort of place, and he wants to go and find out what's happened to them and has to delve into the forest of broken trolls. And there's, as the tagline says, something stirs in the forest of the broken trolls. So very sort of dark fantasy, same kind of vibes as Windborn, but that one was very much fueled by rage, and this one's fueled by, I don't know, just like mystery and longing, I guess.
Tension and darkness and epicness. Loving this.
Hopefully.
I feel like we're getting slowly darker as we go around. Jen, tell us a little bit about what flavor of fantasy you're bringing to SPFBO.
I'm going to go the other way. So my book is Unmagical. It's a contemporary fantasy cozy mystery. I've been sort of calling it cozy apocalypse. It's sort of the world is ending, but it's just changing so that something new can come. So I was really interested in urban fantasy worlds and how they became urban fantasy worlds, like where the magic came from. So this is my debut, and it's the first in a trilogy that is exploring how a world goes from not having any magic to becoming this urban fantasy world. And it's doing that through the lens of a main character who's a witch, who is the only one in her family who doesn't have any magical powers. And so she has sort of left her town where all the witches are in hiding, and has gone off to like just go to college and see what it's like to be a normal person and live a normal human life. She it's kind of like an Amish Rumspringa, where she's got a period of time to like go explore, and then she has to choose between coming back or staying outside. And she's about to hit the deadline where she has to make the decision when her brother turns up and tells her that their father has gone missing. And so she's got to come home to help find out what happened to him. But if she doesn't get back out again, she's going to be stuck there forever. So there's a lot of like complicated family dynamics. She's the 7th child of a 7th child. So there's lots of like older brothers and people who have different motives for whether they want her to stay or not. Nobody's really sure what happened to her father. And so there's a lot of different ways to like look for it. And then in the meantime, also the fact that she doesn't have magical powers is linked to the reason why the father disappeared and the boundary that's hiding the town. And so there's this sort of bigger picture that's attached to this like very personal story. So it's kind of, I've been saying practical magic meets Veronica Mars. She's sort of very snarky, but it's very much a more snark, less dark kind of a story. as opposed to the epics, and then there's no dragons.
That's okay. You got enough. You got a daunting ticking clock there, like
Yeah.
as we're reading, going, "Oh, is she gonna make it?"
Yeah.
And what an impossible decision too, to be like, "Oh man."
Yeah, it's a lot of looking at family versus community, or like the individual freedoms versus what's better for the whole group, and things like that.
Mhm. So not quite as dark, but deep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jasmine, it is so good to have you back on the channel. I know you've been on before, but this is your first time on for SPFBO, so congrats.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And it's good to see you. It's good to see everybody, some new faces or faces that I've known virtually. So it's nice to see everybody. So my book, this is actually my first year getting into SPFBO, and I didn't even know what it was until last year. So I kind of joined the rush this year, to see if I could get in. So my book here does have dragons. It's called A Breaking of Realms, and it is definitely epic fantasy, dragon rider fantasy. And really the premise of it is kind of twofold. The first part is there's like a touch of progression where the characters essentially can bond with a dragon. So if you're able to hatch a dragon egg and bond with that dragon, you choose, what dragon you want depending on what hatches for you. And from there, you can go build towns, cities, and even kingdoms on the continent. And that's something that you want to do because about 40 years ago, there's this big continental war that destroyed most of the continent. And the southern continent is coming to possibly war with this other continent. So they're trying to quickly rebuild. And so this whole program, which is called the Realm Building Enterprise, it's ultimately to build realms, but each character, they can, with their dragon campaign, they can level up their dragon, they can ascend ranks and earn rewards from the headquarters, so to speak. And then the other part of the premise is, so this dragon right here, which is not entirely a dragon, he's found by the main character. So she really wants to join this enterprise of building realms. It's her big dream. Her brother's like the most famous realm builder, dragon rider on the continent. So she wants to become, the greatest realm builder too, but no dragon is hatching for her. So one day this wild dragon falls out of the sky, and she just goes on this journey. She finds out it's entirely not a dragon at all, but it looks like a dragon. It actually is a world breaker. So it's an ancient species that essentially is able to break entire worlds. And this is the last living species of that. And so that's what she found, but she's in denial. She thinks it's a dragon. She calls it a dragon, even though the elves, some of her friends, are warning her that it has to die. And so while everybody's going on this path of realm building, she goes on a path of realm breaking. And so we'll decide and see if she ends up building anything or if she ends up destroying anything, and what that's going to mean with her dragon.
So there you go. Luna, who has been coming live to live looking for dragons. All the dragons you could want. Dragons in all their forms. Oh, yeah. Good to have you on. SD is on. Hey, SD. And if you're watching live and you have questions or thoughts, feel free to drop them in the chat. Everybody, that's why we're doing these live and not like pre-recorded or anything. So, going into SPFBO. There's no real strategy as far as winning SPFBO goes because, you put your book out there. It's assigned to one of the 10 blogs, and then you wait and hope for the best, right? But there's a whole other world of SPFBO that doesn't exist in other contests. There's the community aspect. There's connecting with new readers. And then, of course, readers wanting to know about your other books. So I'm curious to know what your sort of strategy is going into SPFBO, if you had one. Jasmine, you mentioned that you found out about it last year, which is also when I found out about it. So I found out about it last year. Tell us a little bit about whether you've made any kind of plans in that time, or if you're coming into it and just going to sort of ride with the flow.
Yeah, so I am going to ride through the flow. I feel like, to your point, there's not really much you can do with SPFBO. The best thing that you can do is just write the best book, prepare the best blurb, prepare the best cover. So in that sense, I think I've been doing those things, maybe not specifically for SPFBO, but I ended up spending, like, one of my biggest strategies is just I mean, this cover is really expensive. I spent a lot on it, but it was strategic, and it was to really target my book to the correct audience and the correct niche so that I could attract the attention that I needed to be able to get this series to grow, which is so far it's working. And so yeah, that's really my strategy. Is I don't really think there's anything else I could do. Although the people that have been in the contest in previous years, some of the readers, authors in my group, they said that it's a really great networking experience. People are just super uplifting, very supportive, which is just incredible. So I'm hoping to really use that to meet new readers, writers, if anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like trying to figure out if I'm on mute or not on mute. And you're in Kitty G Books with Jen. Is somebody else in Kitty G Books in the group? I know Jen is. Okay, so have you looked at their blog or got a feel for like what kind of books they write? How are you feeling going in with them?
Was that question for me?
Yeah, you, Jasmine. I know you and Jen are both in Kitty G, I think.
So I'm trying not to stress about it, honestly. Like I used to be just a very high strung, super high stress, just, everything has to be perfect or else I'm going to worry about it. I actually just announced to my readers that I quit my day job. So I'm doing this full time as of yesterday. So I'm kind of going to the mindset of, there's only certain things that I can control. And so I'm going to control what I know I can, what I know best to do. And from there, if that's the group I land in, it's the group I land in. I'm just going to believe that it's going to work out the way it's meant to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. Since this is my first book, I only sort of recently started looking into what are their contests and things that I could. So I had this on my radar from something from last year, and I had put it on the calendar as soon as I saw like what the date was to sign up for it, but I didn't do a lot else. Largely because I've been working on writing I sent the second book to my editor yesterday. So I've been working on finishing the manuscript, and like that's all I've been doing. So that's done now. So now I sort of, when they made the announcement about like which group we were in, I did go like find her YouTube and watch some of her videos, and I was like, oh, she might like my book. There are some books in there that I think this might fit in well with. So fingers crossed. But that's about as far as I wasn't sure also like what else there was to do, other than just sort of like watch and wait and fingers crossed and see what goes.
Yeah. And if anybody watching is like, wait, what are the different blogs? So you can click Mark Lawrence's link in the description box to see the full list, or you can click Zach Argyle's link to see the pretty list with all the pictures and sort them by KU and audiobook, or you can go to my video on the SPFBO news playlist where I go through who the blogs are and talk about them. So and put their links there. But so you two are both in Kitty G. I know, Corinne, your covers with Cassidy, right? And that's another great booktuber.
Yeah, so I went and checked out her YouTube and watched some of her videos, but I mean, you can get lost in there for a long time if you just keep watching. So I got the gist of it, and she seems really fun. So I'm excited to see what she has to say. But I mean, because you can only enter the first book or a standalone, and this is the first in a series of 4, I knew that if I didn't get in this year, I'd enter it again next year, because I'm not going to have a standalone or a first in series for 3 or 4 more years. So I kind of went into this with zero stress or expectations. So it was kind of a surprise when I was drawn. I was like, oh, I guess I'm doing it this year then. So that was fun. But yeah, I think it's just kind of a fun way to get to know more people in the industry and to make those connections. And I don't really have expectations other than to just see what it's all about.
Yeah. That's a good way to go, though, because we're going to see some great books, and we won't be agonizing quite as much like M in Queen's Book Asylum. I love their reviews so much, and I think this year they're doing like the team approach, right, where they have like sub-blogs. I haven't gotten to see who's on the sub-blogs yet. That's going to be on SPFBO News next week. But have you seen who yours is with?
Sorry, I was still muted. Yes, I'm in Queens Book Asylum, and my understanding is I am on Arena's list. They had listed out the individuals with like 5 books each, so no pressure, no sweat. I'm looking forward to it though. I really like Queens Book Asylum. I follow their reviews already, so I was sort of like, oh no, but also yay. Yeah, it's kind of neat. I'm very accustomed to like writer community because I spent a very, very long time in the trenches as a moderator for a writing community. So like that part is sort of second nature to me. And sometimes I forget that like, oh yeah, actually it's hard to make writer friends. It's not actually hard, but like the mentality can get like you can get into your own head like really easily. And so that's a thing that I've kind of like tried to lean into, making as much of my personal space within SPFBO, so to speak, like as welcoming as possible. Like my other friends who are in SPFBO this year, I have about a half dozen other people that I'm all like, yes, they're in. So that's been really cool too. Like honestly, like picking people in other teams to root for is super helpful. So I strongly recommend it.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited because it's such a grand community event altogether. It's not like other writing contests where you stick your book out and then you just don't hear anything, and then you go, okay, well, I'll come back and check my email, and if I got an email, I know that I was a finalist or whatever. But like this one, it's boom, hello everybody. Interviews and tags and TBRs aplenty all around. Alex, so you are in Philip Chase's blog, if I'm remembering right. And Philip Chase does some pretty like amazing in-depth reviews. I think sometimes you have to wait a little longer, but when you get them, it's like really in-depth. I watched the first one of Philip's blogs last year and was just going, whoa. As a reviewer, that is like reviewer game level up.
Yeah, so fingers crossed I'm up to it, but we'll find out. Yeah, I think it's Angela at Do Unicorns Read. He sort of split them up into teams as well that are going to pick the semi-finalists. So again, fingers crossed I'm up to the YouTuber challenge of that. Yeah, I hope so. As we've sort of said, the best you can really do is just write the best book you can, and I think I've put a lot of effort into it. So hopefully I've got that. And we were talking about strategy. My only other strategy is that I made sure it was released by June the 1st, so it actually comes out on Friday. So that was my that was the only other strategy I really had with it. And I was umming and ahhing about whether to go wide or put it in KU. So as it's made it into through the lottery, I decided I'm just going to go with KU for a while as well, so that anyone who chooses to read it can have the least amount of barriers to do that, hopefully. But yeah, I mean, I just sort of echoing what everybody's saying. It's just like you say, it's not like other competitions where you just sort of throw your hat in the ring and then like 12 months later it's like, yeah, you didn't make it. It's a whole constant sort of lifting up, like even just not this chat as well. Everyone wants to get to know everybody. It's like, and Daniel says, it's sort of tough. It can be tough to make other writer friends because it's can be really solitary, so you're just tapping away at a keyboard. But this is very much thrown at the wall of 300 other writers that you can suddenly point to and be like, oh, we're literally in the same boat, let's be friends. And it's just a really nice experience. So I'm just hoping to make the most of that, really, and just get involved, read other people's books, lift them up. I made a post in the SPFBO Facebook group about doing like the Reddit bingo reading challenge, and trying to do that this year with indie books. So I've got like a massive spreadsheet of like 150 books for people that were good enough to tell me what categories their books went into. So I'm as part of lifting, I'm going to try and share that around for everybody. So yeah, just being involved is good.
That's awesome. Thank you for putting that together. There are so many little opportunities like that, but it takes a lot of work to organize that. Like you said, 150 people out of 300. That's half of the books that you had to track.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm very grateful that people have volunteered the information about what categories they fit into. I'm not sure I'd be able to read all of them and put them in, but yeah, I'm just going to sort of share that around so that everybody gets a nice lift. I think it's just it's I think SPFBO sort of epitomizes like the very community aspect of everybody wanting everybody to do well, which is just really nice.
Yeah, 100%. And thank you so much, RA. Congrats on getting your books drawn. Good luck in the rounds. Yes. And we did, raise a glass. I think a lot of us did, to those who didn't get the coin flip, because there were almost double how many people they needed. And the 300 were randomly selected. But those who didn't get drawn can try again next year. And hopefully we see some of these great, what they're calling hashtag SPFNO books in next year. For sure. So, since we're here to talk about books, and last year's finalists were so character driven in their storylines, we're going to talk about your main characters, and who we're basically committing to follow if we pick up your book. You don't have to tell us if they get what they want. That's spoilers, and we actually want to read these books. But Jen, why don't you start us off? Tell us a little bit about your main character.
Okay. My main character is Kate Corey. She is 20 years old. She's about to turn 21. She has grown up in this community where everybody has magic. The magic is all sort of elemental in base. So like her brother's magic is associated with the element of fire, but I've taken sort of a tarot translation on how the elements work. So fire has to do with creativity, and so his gift, his like special magical whatever, is that he's kind of a muse. So he has this ability to help people to go after what they want. If they're like not acting on something that they would be good at or that they're interested in or whatever, he can kind of like give them the push to go do the thing that they want. And sometimes it's a big dramatic thing about like their life's work, and sometimes it's like, I need this person to leave the room. I think this person probably needs an ice cream cone and there's a truck going by, so let me like push him to go get the ice cream. So he and Kate are twins, but he has this gift, and as far as she knows, she's not had one her whole life. She's just been waiting for this gift to appear. And the world that they have grown up in is set up where you either have this gift that makes magic come fairly easily to you, or you can learn magic through the craft. And it's a very academic approach to how magic works, and it's herbalism and it's tarot and it's those kinds of things. And so she's taken sort of the academic route, which leads to her going out to college to try to see like, well, if I'm not actually going to have this gift and magic is never going to come easy to me, what else can I learn? And sort of looking at learning and education as another form of creating magic in that kind of way. She's deeply snarky. She is, she doesn't really, her brother likes to just mess around and play and never takes anything seriously, and so she kind of finds that annoying. Yeah, like she's very connected with her family, but she doesn't at all fit in. She's very much the black sheep in there. There were all these expectations of the seventh child, and she hasn't lived up to any of those, and so she's struggling to sort of find where her place is. Because she does feel very supported and loved by her family, but also like she's not like them. So it's this weird conflict of like wanting to be with them because you love them and you're cared for, but also there's got to be a place where I fit in better somewhere. And so that's kind of the beginning of the story.
Yeah, a lot of good character questions to drive her growth.
Yeah,
for sure. It doesn't quite strike like a coming of age as much as like accepting who she is.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of so I was a high school teacher, and my students, when they were getting to be juniors and seniors, started to have a lot of trouble finding books that they wanted because they were still looking for like YA type coming of age, finding yourself, figuring out where you belong in the world. That's what going to college is, right? Is to sort of figure out what your place is. And I'm not a kid anymore. My parents aren't going to take care of me. So what do I do now? And so there's a lot of books that are, teenager saves the world. And then there's a lot of books that are more adult and have more like adult themes and the spice and all of that stuff. I wanted a book that my students could read and talk to their family about and their parents about without being embarrassed about whatever. So it's no spice. There's a romance in it, but it's like a way back burner slow plot. Like there's not a whole lot going on in there. But yeah, it's more about like figuring out who she is and where she belongs, that kind of.
Awesome. I love a good new adult fantasy. Not because I write in it, but that is my
well,
genre.
it's weird. It was hard to place because I was like, when I started marketing it, I'm like, okay, so it's adult, but all of the like adult social media stuff that I'm seeing is like adult, and I'm like, it's not that. It's not that at all.
For that wonderful gray area in between where you're still figuring everything out, but also for adults who feel like they understand what that's like.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've had a lot of readers that are my age, that are moms. I've had grandmothers read it and then pass it down to their like teenage daughter or granddaughters, and because that otherwise wouldn't make sense. So yeah, I've been really surprised by the reception of it, because I did definitely write it for my kids who were graduating and going to college. Not my students, not my actual. So I was picturing it as being a like 16 to maybe 21, 22, and my mom took it to her book club and they all loved it. So
So how about you, Em? What is your main character like?
Sorry, it took me a second to recognize that. All right, so my main character is Verilyn Dutolor, who is that lovely lady on the front cover of my book. So I actually started writing this book based on the cover image, because I originally entered the Inkfort Press Self-Publishing Derby. And so they assign you a cover and a nom de guerre, and that's sort of where I got started. So this character has been very special to me, like kind of the whole time. And I had to invent her like from what she looked like. So that was sort of an interesting challenge. I was not expecting it to be quite so challenging. So Verilyn is a princess in exile. She begins the story trapped in a tower in her father's castle. And she has some assistance from two people who help her to escape when the castle is under siege. They also help her to steal back a weapon that had belonged to her deceased mother, a weapon that contains the soul of a demon, who is the bright glowing green gem you see on all of my marketing material. And that demon is not all that he claims to be, and is much more than that also. So she is sort of having to contend with this voice in her head trying to tell her what to do, or what not to do, or what he thinks is appropriate, and also her new friends. I guess one of them is not really a new friend. One of them is her mentor, who has been the only outside world voice that she's been allowed to have while she was held in this tower. Her mentor, named Carice, is an older lady who has kind of provided at least an outside glimpse of what the world should be like. And so Verilyn knows that the world that she's living in is not good, and that it needs to change. But the moment in the siege that I would say is probably the most important is where a wizard, who is also not all that he's cracked up to be, appears and facilitates the escape. This is all the first chapter, so I'm not really spoiling anything. But so the whole story is her growth from this person who is very sheltered and very raised with a bunch of prophetic beliefs that are obviously not true, but the way in which they're not true is something that sort of develops over the course of the story.
Deceit and lies and truth all mixed together, and then find who you are and do all the heroic things.
Right. And like, I mean, there's also some questions about just sort of like, when you have been claimed to be, either the where there are interpretations of the prophecy that defines your life that could either be the greatest thing ever, or that you are the worst thing ever. Like, how do you negotiate that and become a regular person?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
And do
regular
you
is
want to be a
relative.
regular person? Do you want to be regular?
Oh yeah, no, she doesn't. She's very much a sword first, ask questions later kind of gal.
I love a nice stabby main character. What can I say? How about you, Jasmine? What kind of main character are you bringing?
So I'll conceptualize first how she came about, which I think will kind of, make more sense. So when I was crafting Realm Breaker, again, that idea of, okay, like what if you could build villages, towns, and kingdoms on a continent? What would that look like in an epic fantasy novel? And then the flip side is, what would it look like to then go and destroy and break everything and become that Realm Breaker? So that kind of was already in the back of my mind. And then just the way that I come up with stories a lot of times is through music. And so I was listening to this one song and I just imagined this girl falling in the dark. And I imagined this dragon falling upside down, and I didn't know why they were falling, but they were falling, and it turned into a whole story. And so that kind of led to the main character in this book, Scalda. And so she is a commoner. She's basically a badass wolf hunter, is where she starts out, but her heart is very closed. There are just many circumstances from her childhood that has closed her heart to a lot of, emotion and close relationships. Being that she's a hunter of wolves, she's become very close to like pets, to animals. And so when a baby hatchling, a dragon hatchling, falls to her from the skies for the first time in her entire life, she's awakened to love, and she just wants to protect this thing, even though she's coming to realize that it's going to lead her down the path of becoming a realm breaker. And so that's the whole premise, I would say, of the first book. In terms of age range, she's about 19 when we start the book. And really following her is just that question of how far will you go to protect the one that you love? And I think I was having a lot of fun with this because I do really like romantasy and romance and fantasy. But this is kind of almost like a romance between a human writer and their dragon. And what does that kind of a romance look like? I think that we often don't think about that as romance, but just exploring that relationship of purity and friendship and love between a human and dragon. And I think that's a lot of the reason why, people currently are so drawn to dragons, is that idea that any one of us, who may be an underdog, who may be ordinary, we could have something just so mighty and rare and powerful bond with us and love with us. And so that's, really kind of the character is, it's a lot of moral struggles, moral questions of, am I going to protect this little hatchling that I love, even though, everybody is saying that it could turn into a realm breaker that's going to destroy realms, destroy worlds? Or do I do the right thing and kill the one thing that I love because everybody's advising me to do that? So that's pretty much my character in a nutshell.
I love it so much. I love the Stitch illustration too. And I just picture Lilo like, isn't it nice to live on an island with no big cities? But yes, protect the hatchling. See, the people who are in the chat, they are all in agreement. Protect the hatchling. Hatchling overworld here. All right. Alex, how about you?
Yeah, so my main character is Alva Einarson. He's the guy on the front. As I sort of mentioned, he's a god speaker, like rune weaver. So sort of holy healer type thing, which I think lends this to that, as I said, that sort of tension between these windborn warriors and his sort of calling for the gods. We sort of meet him. He's got this drive to help people because he's obviously a healer and traveling between like remote farmsteads and stuff. But as we meet him in like the first chapter, he's not able to save somebody. He's able to sort of ease their suffering from whatever illness that they're suffering from, but not save them completely. So he sort of goes in search of more runes or power to do that. And then I think sort of he struggles with this, wanting to do everything alone because he has the gods on his side. So he feels like that should be enough, but it consistently, being forced to be accompanied by other people. As I said earlier as well, there's this god speaker that's gone missing, and she's gone missing in the forest of broken trolls, so he wants to go and find her. He wants to do that alone, but the people who live on the edge of it are like, yeah, that's not a good idea, so we're not gonna like lose two god speakers. So he gets sent in with a few other people, including a couple of windborn warriors, and it's sort of his tension of having to deal with that. And one of the people he gets sent in with as well as his estranged sister. So kind of dealing with the guilt of like leaving her as well when he was much younger. So I like to think he's quite a deep character in that way, and he's got a lot going on, like they all do. They've all so much going on for all these characters. You have to feel a little bit sorry for them in some ways, but we love to see it. So
yeah, like you said, I think you and I are catty cornered here. Darkest books represented in this current panel, not of SPFBO. I have seen some grim dark books come through this blitz, but I think the thing that draws you to dark fantasy and as a reader most of the time is the fact that somebody has it worse than you do, and yet they still have something worth going on this journey for. And so if they can find something worth going on the journey for, then it makes all the darkness of the real world that much more bearable, if just a smidge. It's like, we can get through this. We can overcome this. So, yeah. Corinne, I'm excited. Tell me about your main character.
Technically, I have two, so I'll keep it shorter for each. Eliana is the main girl, and her big struggle is just that she's been raised by these people who kidnapped her, and so her only experience with magic has been extremely negative. It's just been used for evil, and she hates it. She thinks her own blood is tainted. And so her journey is about figuring out that magic in itself is not evil. It's the choices that are made with it and how it's used and that sort of thing. So she's kind of fighting against, these negative feelings she's been growing up with. And then, of course, she does eventually get across the barriers, the magical barriers, and she's looking for her mother. So it's also a journey to get to her mother and try to reconstruct her family. And then Garen, he's kind of a naive prince. He's been sheltered. He wants to be the hero. He wants to save her. He last remembers her as a toddler. She's about 17, 18 in the story, and he's about 23. So he was 8 when he saw her disappear, and she was this pudgy little toddler that he really liked playing with. And so he thinks he's saving this little girl, but she's part of something much bigger that he can't save her from, and so it's a lot of humbling experiences for him throughout that process. And then technically there's a third point of view that she just has some random chapters here and there. She's kind of a mysterious, ageless character who has lots of knowledge and lots of magic, and we really don't get her whole story until the end of the series. So she just kind of pops in and out.
I love that you set it up with this classic trope of, oh, they're childhood friends, and then it all twists. Like it's original. I said on the first panel this morning, I love the classic tropes, like chosen one tropes, even though they're overdone a little bit. But then I also like seeing them shifted around to where they're more original because I've read so much of them that it's like, yes, okay, I know what this means now. How's it going to work out? Oh. Well, thank you all so much for being here. And yes, thank you all so much for being here, for sharing, for getting here on an afternoon in the middle of the week to talk about books and SPFBO. I wish you all the absolute best of luck. I hope to see you in the semifinalists and the finalists, and we can come back and chat again next year, I hope so. Knocking on wood a little bit. But yeah, good luck, everybody. Don't give up.
Thank you. Thank you, Katherine.
Lucky number 13.
My pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Tune in tonight on the playlist. Mike and Ro from the Bald and Balding BookTube channel are going to be hosting the next panel, which is panel number 14. I will be back tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. Central Time to do one with Andrew D. Meredith and Sierra Hartford. So we've got more coming all the way through the end of the day Saturday. Thanks so much, everybody.
Okay.